Welcome to FortinetLIVE. I'm Sarah Ryba, a tactical threat analyst at Fortinet. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming the first, second, and third place winners of Fortinet's Ultimate Fabric Challenge competition, joining us to discuss their experiences and careers in cybersecurity. Alan Baker, Jesse Homa, and Ben Lehere. Thank you all for being here today. Having competed in and won multiple Ultimate Fabric challenges myself, I know how thrilling and challenging the experience can be. I'm excited to hear about the obstacles you all overcame and the moments that led you to the finish line. Let's dive in. For starters, can each of you provide a quick overview of what you placed in this year's UFC competition, your current role, and how you ended up in cybersecurity?
Sure. So my name is Jesse Homa. I placed first in this year's UFC competition. I'm currently working as a senior project engineer at Cyber Advisors, which is a managed service provider based in Minneapolis, Minnesota in the United States. I initially started my career in network infrastructure support about 15 plus years ago, and then I had a passion for security, so I started getting more into firewalls, endpoint security, network access control.
Cool. I'm Alan Baker. I'm from IP Glass. We're based out of Sydney, Australia. We're a managed security provider. I work from home in Tassie, in the far south of Australia. I've been in this company for about 12 months. I don't know if I just said, but I came second in the UFC globally. I've been working with Fortinet for 5 or 6 years. I kind of started my security role by accident. I was given the option to go to a 2-day Fortinet training course and thought that was pretty fun. So I got into that, and that was about 8 or 9 years ago, and it's been a blast since then.
Very good. And my name's Ben Lehere. I came third in this year's competition. So for this competition, my current role, I'm a solutions architect inside a distributor. So I've done a few UFCs over the time, and that was my preparation for that was for doing that. And there, ending up in cyber was almost by accident as well for me. I was at this distributor doing a different set of products. The role came up for Fortinet, and they needed someone that could also take on the certified trainer role, which is also what I do here. So I put my hand up, walked in, and about 8 years ago, I started dealing with Fortinet, and about 7 years ago, I became the certified trainer as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you all for sharing that. I mean, first thing I want to just say is congratulations. I mean, being in the UFC competitions myself, I mean, I know firsthand, it's challenging, it's really fun. And you get down to those last few minutes and it gets a little stressful. And one of the things I love too about cyber, just the industry in a whole, is the broad array of opportunities that there are. Like, we can all say we're in cybersecurity, but we all do like completely different things almost. And I think that's really one of the fun aspects of the industry, and it's one of the more challenging things, the different variety of skill sets that we can all offer to the industry. So I guess we'll jump into the next question. Tell us a little bit about how you prepared for the UFC competition, if there was anything in particular that you felt going into helped you feel more prepared and helped you ultimately, become a winner. And then from there, what was your biggest takeaway from the UFC? Did you learn anything? Because I know some of you have, competed in the past. Was there anything that was, drastically different that you either enjoyed or didn't like compared to the last competitions?
Sure. So actually, prior to the UFC competition, I was actually studying for and passed my NSE 8 or the FCX certification about 4 or 5 days prior to the competition. So I wasn't really trying to study for the UFC. My focus was on the FCX. So I had already studied a lot of the content, mostly from the Fortinet training online portal. So going through the admin guides, lab guides, things like that. And I built a fairly robust home lab to kind of play around with that stuff. So when we ended up getting the tasks for the UFC competition, or the broad topics that we were going to be going for, I actually found that I had already been studying for it for months at that point. So it actually ended up being easy to integrate. There were a few products that I had to, build out extra labs or brush up on, but generally using that Fortinet training portal was my main resource. The biggest takeaway I have to say for the competition, other than the fact that we have to, keep on learning for all of these new technologies that are coming up, was just how surprised I was to be a part of just this big, community of like-minded individuals that were, some of the sharpest engineers I've had to work with. And being able to just talk at a high level about, the passionate that we have about cybersecurity and these technologies was just, it was just really warming to be able to, have those conversations outside of just my company or the team that I'm with, across regional or even across the world. So I thought that was pretty great.
That's awesome. I guess I would love to say that's fantastic. Congratulations on the NSE 8. That's no easy feat at all. You should be extremely proud of that. But other than that, Alan, take it away. I'd love to hear what you have to say as well.
Yeah, for me, I started this journey years ago. I decided when my Fortinet cam said, "Hey, Alan, why don't you sit the NSE 8 exam?" in 2019. I thought, oh, that sounds like a great idea. Since then, I think I sat every single NEC Labs training course, read every single guide. Pretty much, I've done it all at one stage or another. So it kind of got me into the UFC because I've already touched all of those products. I think this must have been my 4th or 5th UFC that I've sat over the years, and they've definitely got better. They're definitely more focused, and they're definitely more point. And they relate to what we're doing on a daily basis. So it's not like you're studying for something you never use. You're studying for something that you're using regularly. So for us, it was really good. It makes us touch on some of the key products like the FortiPAM, the FortiSASE, the FortiSwitch. There's never been an AP. Maybe there will be in the next one. Who will know? But yeah, that for us is good. Like, you get to study the stuff. You're forced to do it. Personally, for the UFC, I spent about 3 or 4 hours studying right before I jumped on the plane for the 32-hour trip to Vegas. So, I done a lot better than I thought. Actually, I got to the end of the competition. Actually, no, it was the start. About 10 minutes in, I thought, I've caked this. I'm just going to enjoy the show. I put my music on. I just had fun on the way. I got to the end. It was like, wait, I'm sitting second. I'm not touching anything now because all I can do is make this worse. So. Yeah, and like Jesse, the biggest takeaway is about meeting the other similar people in similar roles, talking to people, cruising around and learning how other people do stuff differently. So, yeah, that's the big thing. It's the connection, it's the learning, it's also a bit of self-pride on the way as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that. Ben?
So to add to what the other guys have said, as working in distribution and having to enable our partner community, I need to be on the cutting edge and learning all those new features. And fortunately, that's typically what UFC throws at us, is all those new features and all those new things that we need to understand how they implement. Also, being a trainer, I need to be able to understand those concepts. Working in distribution also enables me to chop and change from different things and absorb that material as quickly as possible. There's not like I'm not assigned to a project and I'm working on a project. I get lots of little things here and there and then have to analyze them quickly, figure out what the best solution is and go forward from there. That's been my preparation for UFC, is just doing my day-to-day job, which is really, really handy. So same as the other guys, pretty much. And I agree that the biggest takeaway and some of the best things from the UFC is the relationships with some of the people that you develop there. So yeah, it was great to catch up. So a couple of years ago, I was in UFC in the global competition, and one of the other guys wasn't there the next year, and then this year he was, and it was good to catch up with him again. And he's based in Brazil, and we've still kept in touch on LinkedIn and things like that. So it's building that sort of community and having those friends and relationships, and then engineering knowledge and talent that's shared is key to me.
Yeah, that's always one of the things that I enjoyed most about, Experts Accelerate is, the UFC is fun and all, getting to be competitive and apply some of those skills that you gain in your day-to-day career, as well as the training that you do, but just, being surrounded by other people who enjoy the same things that you do and getting to learn with them, bounce ideas off of each other is probably one of the most fulfilling things that I have gotten to experience at some of those competitions. And it seems like you all agree with that as well. So That's great that, you know, other people feel the same way. So we discussed a little bit about the things that you guys did to prepare for the the UFC competition. But I want to ask, so how have, you know, some of the trainings that you've done, specifically the NSE trainings, and the experiences that you've gained over your career, how has that benefited you overall?
Sure. For me, I'd say one of the biggest skills that I got from both like the training portal as well as just, you know, like I said, 15 plus years in IT and cybersecurity is you start to develop an understanding of how to break down a problem into its core components or pieces. And once you're able to kind of see the basic building blocks of any particular problem, it becomes a lot easier to troubleshoot or understand how to move forward with any kind of a problem. Both with the UFC tasks and even like the FCX, being able to just see and understand how the technology works and what the components are, it really helps you like deeply understand the problems and bring that to the table for your customers or whoever you're working with. The other side of the coin is kind of time management. So both UFC and the FCX, and in my day-to-day career, being able to prioritize tasks and understand like where and when I should put effort to get the most efficiency out of a given thing has been probably one of the bigger things that I've focused on and I've been able to be successful with to make sure that my career has been running well by utilizing those. And the training portal and things like the UFC and the FCX really help show off those skill sets.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I honestly couldn't agree more. Alan, go ahead. I'd love to hear what you have to say as well.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit different than Jesse. Like the time management stuff of the FCX and the UFC, I'm terrible at. I want to succeed. I want to make things right, and you know, and that's a problem. Like you get to the UFC challenge, you want to do something. It's like this is really dodge. It's, you know, do it easy way. It's like no, we want to do it good, but it's just the step back. But you know, sometimes you just got to cut it through. But it's right. It's about looking at the task, looking at the process as a whole, and taking that back to your clients as well. You know, the NSE training, it really helps you get an understanding of what's happening and why it's happening. So it's not about, oh, I can do the outcome. It's about how you get there on the way through. So if something changes that you're not expecting, you can deal with it. So the training, the UFC, all of that stuff just makes, you know, life easier essentially. I mean, I can look at a FortiGate config file and know exactly what's happening and why it's happening and how to fix stuff. So if someone brings a silly problem to me, I can usually go, oh, here it is, line 20, that's your problem, and go from there. But yeah. Yeah,
definitely over the years, like as you expose yourself to all these various different problems and you realize, you know, sometimes there's different approaches to troubleshooting the same problem. It kind of starts to click in your head. I mean, you can look at the same problem over and over and over and people will be like, oh my God, you're magical, you fixed it. And it's just like, well, I've just seen it, you know, 50 times. But I like that you mentioned the time management because that's, you know, something that we all work on, I feel like, but the UFC really got me there because I'm one of those stubborn people who I just want to, you know, I'll pick something and I want to work on it until it's done, until it's perfect. And in the UFC, you can't necessarily do that because it's timed. And ultimately, you know, if we all sat there we could sit there all day and we'd all probably, you know, get all the points 100%. But it's ultimately, it comes down to, you know, who can do it faster, who can do it first. So that was always a little bit of a struggle with me. But what are your thoughts, Ben?
Yeah, I agree. Not letting perfect be the enemy of good enough is a key learning point from those things there. But in particular to NSE training, I've always been a trainer. Obviously, it's benefited my career because I'm a trainer and I have a job because of that. But I've always gotten feedback from people around the course about the structure and the plans and the way it goes to be implemented. Having a structured presentation with just enough material to understand the concept, and then a lab to actually absorb it. Because people learn different ways, taking on those skills and learning them both ways, through a presentation, through an instructor-led training, so you can ask questions and comments, and then through a hands-on lab is actually really, really beneficial and really strategic in the way that you can learn. And especially since the course and the structure has been revised late last year, with the introduction of that FCF, that fundamentals, I think that was the thing that was missing previously to the whole training course. So now, because that's what I think is key, and to Jesse's point before about understanding and breaking down a problem, is breaking it down to those basic things and understanding where they come from. So if you understand what is actually happening If you know this is a packet, that's what a packet is, and that's where it's going. Debugging and finding and troubleshooting problems becomes a whole lot easier when you're just trying to figure out where's that little packet going and understanding those types of things. And then the amount of times I've seen people take screenshots from the study guides or whatever and present them as, hey, why haven't you done this? Because it's in the training material about this little obscure thing that happens to be mentioned in the training material, but is key to debugging and implementing tasks is key.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Fortinet's doing a great job now, kind of diving into a little bit more of those fundamental building blocks. And some of those key pieces that I even look back now today going, if I didn't read that, if I didn't learn that, I don't think I would be where I am now. So I like that they're exposing people to that more, especially with, the skills gap in cyber. I think a lot of people are looking towards a good starting point. Jumping back to what I mentioned earlier, just about cyber being so broad of an industry, there's so many different paths you can take. And I think key there in training material and learning paths is giving everyone, a really good solid foundation to start from that allows them to learn that material and kind of branch off in different directions. I guess on that note, what advice can you give those who are following a similar path in cyber?
Yeah, so I mean, to your point that you mentioned, there's just dozens, if not hundreds, of different variations of jobs that you can do in cybersecurity. I mentor a lot of high school students in our local area that are kind of doing like a college prep into cybersecurity. So I have a lot of opportunity to kind of see what works well for them. And what I've seen time and time again is just find things that you're really passionate about. I truly believe that if you're really passionate about something, let's say if you're going into cybersecurity and you really like working with hardware, you really like analyzing problems, you can find a job that boosts those strengths of yours. And anybody that's working towards something they're passionate about, they're going to be successful. You're going to understand the problems and the content deeper. You're going to have more confidence about, yourself talking about it, and other people are going to see that confidence and they're going to confide in you, work with you to solve any of the problems that you have. Aside from that, if you're in IT, I think building a home lab is almost key. It's worth its weight in gold to just really get your hands on the technology and understand what you're working with and then gain that confidence. And then being able to have that no matter what is going to make you succeed regardless of where you go in your career, especially in cybersecurity.
Fantastic. Thank you. Alan?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate the others have said that cyber's not one job. It's, hundreds and hundreds of different ones. I sat a 4-day incident response course last year. It was a great course. I got to the end of that course going, man, I do not want to work in incident response. I'm, really happy on the network front. Biggest advice going forward for anyone is just keep studying. Don't just focus on the outcome, focus on the journey. Work out the why of why you're trying to do everything. If you have to do a task, don't just look at the end. Look at how you get there. Look at how you can improve the process. Look at how you can make, the world better and have a better understanding. And I want to also touch on the home lab stuff from Jesse, that you can't succeed in life unless you understand life. So get the home lab going. If you've got to do something, make sure you understand it. Spend an hour, work out how it works, work out how it doesn't work, and then just make it awesome. And then people are going to come to you and say, hey, how do you do this? And, like you said earlier, Sarah, that some of the stuff in the training guide, you've seen it years ago and you remember it. I've got training guides going back for the last, 8 years. And I remember, hey, I saw that really one obscure thing that there's this one command to turn off all web filtering. And lo and behold, that was a question in one of the NEC 8 exams. It's just the more you read, the more you look, the better it is. I mean, I've fallen asleep on keyboards so many times listening to those NEC videos, but, it pays off in the end. So just keep learning is the big takeaway.
That's why you need an instructor rather than the video.
There you go.
So I can sleep on you, Mr. Ben.
Yeah.
I guess, Ben, you have an interesting point of view from an instructor. I mean, what kind of advice would you have that differs from what the other guys have mentioned?
Well, I think it actually goes back to exactly what they're saying. There are many different paths. This is just one that I happen to end up on. I find what I enjoy and go with it. That's back to Jesse's passion. explanation there as well. So try things, do things, play with things. If home lab works for you, then great, go and build it. If not, there are fast track modules to go and play and do hands-on. I find best by learning by doing. That doesn't necessarily mean everyone does, but find what works best for you and go ahead and do that. I was speaking to a colleague in here recently who wanted to get into cyber, and I started asking some basic questions around networking, and the answers weren't exactly the proper answer I would expect to go. I said, look, go back and learn some fundamentals. Don't try and, just because there's a cyber skills gap, don't try and jump the horse. Don't try and, what is it, jump the shark, yeah? Don't try and get to the end before the beginning. Go through the path, you're going to have to work through it. There's some great utilities online that are free, as well as the training institute. There's things like Try Hack Me, which is a great little website to go and build some basic level skills, and it advances you and things like that. So finding out what works for you, what works for you and excites you is definitely key. And for me, training and enabling and seeing that knowledge transfer and having those conversations with people and upskilling those, I get joy out of that. And so that's what I found. So it builds on both of what they said, regardless of where I've ended up. It builds on the same thing they said.
That's great. I love all that advice, honestly. Like, having passion, you're finding that passion, enjoying the journey, getting your hands dirty, figuring out how things work, breaking it down to a fundamental level. I mean, I like to think of cybersecurity, as an industry as being living. It's constantly changing, it's constantly evolving. And in order to, keep up, you have to keep learning, and you have to be one of those people who, enjoys learning and enjoys, figuring out the little things and building upon that. And that's, that tends to be what I tell everyone who asks me, like, how do you get into cyber? Is, find something that you love and just roll with it. I mean, going back onto how many different paths there are, if you're doing what you love, you'll make it wherever you want to be. If you keep learning and you keep exploring those different paths. But other than that, I mean, is there anything else that you would all like to mention in regards to this conversation before we conclude?
I was going to say, to build on that, failure is just another path on the road to success. Yeah. So don't be discouraged. If you try something and it doesn't work out, then just move on to the next thing and try that. You'll eventually find something that works for you. And yeah, I relish my failures more than my successes almost sometimes, because they're the ones that build knowledge, build growth and character. So
yeah, I mean, honestly, failure, that's how you learn. And everything that I've done, I've failed so many times, and those have always been the biggest lessons for me and the biggest learning points. Is I don't look back and go, oh, I read this in a book one time. I'll look back and go, oh, I really messed something up, but I'm not going to do that again, because it really left an imprint in my mind. I'm sure all y'all can relate, and taking networks down and all that fun stuff.
I just want to touch on one thing, Sarah, and it's about you. That you were a feared adversary for many of people, and people online were saying, oh no, Sarah's going to compete in the global UFC. Yeah, no one's got a chance. Sarah's going to kick her asses. I don't know if I could say that. Someone will have to edit it out, I'm sure. But then it got to the end. It's like, Sarah now works for Fortinet. Sarah's not going to globals. Hey, there was a massive cheer in the thing. So I mean, for you, women in cyber, the right way to say it is, it's fantastic to see you go and see you push, and to have you up there kicking everyone else's butts. Just commend you for that. And shame we didn't get to compete against you again this year, but hopefully other people can follow in your footsteps and you do the same thing, and make the divide go away. That there shouldn't be women in cyber as a difference. Everyone should have the same opportunity everywhere. So I like what you're doing, and congratulations for it. I just hope more people see what you're doing and follow through as well.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I never looked at it as being, a female up there with all the guys, until everyone points it out. I just go up there and try my hardest and keep my head down and, look at the clock like, oh crap, there's 30 seconds left. But I've always been very competitive, and, I'm bummed I didn't get to go to global with y'all this year, but at the same time, it took a little bit of stress off my back, so I'm not too beat up about it. But I really appreciate all that you said. I know for a lot of people, it means something, having women up there to kind of represent and I think all the advice that y'all have provided today and just the sharing of your experiences, I mean, man or woman, everyone can look at that, learn something from it, and use it to get out there. So thank you. Appreciate it. Well, other than that, I guess that concludes our conversation. Thank you once again for your time today. For those tuning in, don't forget to check out Fortinet's website, Fortinet.com, to learn more about the Ultimate Fabric Challenge and Fortinet's Training Institute certifications that we talked about today.